Hey, what's going on? It's Richard at reefs.com and aficionado channel, and I am here in Miramar, Florida to visit my SPS guru, Reinaldo of Pirates.Reef.Coral. And as you guys requested, I'm gonna get you guys information on how he feeds his coral. Check it out.
Hello guys, it's Reinaldo here from Pirates.Reef.Corals. We're going to show you today some foods that I use to feed the tanks and what I recommend. And one of the common misconceptions with feeding your tank is that corals don't really need it. A lot of people say fish poop and water changes is all you need. That's true to a certain point if you don't have a large coral load, but when you start getting into larger amounts of corals and your tank is full, every square inch of the water is full with corals, you got to start adding a little something in there, because in the ocean, they have constant food supply. There's constantly phytoplanktons and all types of things going around. There's natural fish poop, obviously. And in the ocean, corals are constantly being fed. They have no limit to the amount of food they can take because they're constantly growing and they live infinitely. They don't die off. They're like trees. They just keep growing until something happens that actually kills them. All right guys, first thing I recommend when you're feeding your tank is to turn off your return pumps, because a lot of people just throw the food into the tank and it gets washed down the overflows and goes into your filters, and you're just wasting the food essentially because the corals aren't grabbing any of it. You got to give them a little bit of time to be able to catch it in their polyps. And what I do in my tank is I have an apex mode set up where my return pump turns off for an hour and my power heads turn off for 5 minutes so the fish can catch some food. And then once the power heads turn on, I pour in the coral food and let it circulate for the remainder of the hour. And that allows all the food to disappear into the tank. You won't see any of it going to waste down the overflow. The first food I want to recommend to you guys is Reef Nutrition's Oyster Feast. I've been using this one for many years and I like the reaction you get from the corals. The SPS actually do very well with it compared to some of the other foods I've tried. And a lot of people don't believe it works for SPS, but it actually does work very well. It also works for everything else, LPS, zoas, and any other coral you may have in your tank, gonnies, anything that needs to be fed on a daily basis. And from my experience of using the Oyster Feast, I have noticed that the corals give me a little bit better PE because, they're hunting for food during the day. The growth was a little bit better. It didn't raise my nitrates or phosphates as long as you use the recommended levels for your tank size and your coral load, of course. And also the corals, they get better colors just from being fed, of course. And some of the details of Oyster Feast is that the microns on the particles are 1 to 200, so it can feed all your corals from LPS to SPS, including gonnies, which is the majority of the stuff that we like at this moment. The food is all natural with no fillers and includes a lot of proteins, vitamins, amino acids, and lipids that we need in our corals. Also, the recommendation for the dosage is actually pretty on point for this food, but if you don't have many corals in your tank, use a little bit less. Like with everything, always start slow. And a lot of people ask me about the nutrients on the Oyster Feast. And here at Pirates Reef, I test weekly to keep everything in line because SPS require a very strict nutrient levels and alkalinity and everything else. I've been using the Oyster Feast for about 5 years without any issues, and it's never raised my phosphate or nitrate as long as I stayed within the guidelines and I didn't go over anything. And it's been keeping my corals growing great for all this time. All right guys, and another product I want to recommend to you guys that I've been using a lot and I really like it is Coral Frenzy. It's a powder food similar to Reefroids or Benepets, in that area. But what I like about this food a lot is that his ingredients are completely transparent. It tells you everything that's in it, and it's all natural, and it has probiotics as well now in the new formula. And I've been using it for about a year or so now, and I love it. The reaction from the corals is great. It doesn't raise my phosphates or nitrates as long as you stay within the recommended levels like everything else. And I've been getting a really good feeding response from the corals. I've noticed a little bit better PE. Also, there's some larger pieces in there the fish can pick at. And the probiotics in it actually keep your nitrates and phosphates in line. And as the bacteria grows in your tank, it actually can feed your corals, and whatever's left over gets skimmed out. But it's like a 2-for-1. You're feeding the corals with the actual powder, and also the bacteria will grow and feed your corals eventually as well. I feed very heavily every day, and then this food has really made my gonnies, mushrooms. I mean, of course, the SPS always do well for me, but the LPS have really exploded in my tank. And even I have a trichophilia, I've had it for about 5 years, put out a baby the other day, and I've never seen that happen before. It was a little tiny speck just moved off to the side of the tank. I found it in a corner when I was actually looking for another coral that had flown away on me in the tank. All right guys, and just to remind you again, with Coral Frenzy or Oyster Feast or any other food that you feed your tank, always start slow and keep in mind your coral load, because a lot of times these recommendations on these foods is for a medium loaded tank that actually has a lot of corals in it. If you have just a few spare frags around your tank, definitely don't start with the recommended dosage. Use a little bit less, and then with your weekly tests or monthly tests or whatever you do of your nutrients, adjust accordingly. If it goes up, dose less. If it goes down, dose more. All right guys, and once again, it's Reinaldo from Pirates.Reef.Corals. Thank you for watching our video with Richard from Reefs.com, and don't forget to check out Pirates.Reef.Corals.com. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook, and keep feeding your corals, keep them happy and healthy. And remember, if their tank ain't nice, don't take their advice. Stay safe guys, and take care. It took like 5 hours for fucking 15 minutes last time. Are you ready?
He's already recording.
Those are all gonna be in the bloopers. It's gonna be like. Oh, shimmy.